Begin today the Mishnah on Daf Nun Zayin Amud Aleph. Sagt Heilige Mishnah. Kainam peiris ha'elu alai. Person says his neder is that these peiris right here should be usher to me. Or he says hein al pi, that these peiris here should be usher for my mouth. Or similar lashon kainim hein lefi, that they should be usher for my mouth. Hein al pi or hein lefi. So in all these lashonos, the halacha is asa b'chilufein. He will not be allowed to eat not only these fruits itself, but also if he replaces them with something else, or bigiduleim, or if he plants the seeds of these fruits, and additional fruits grow, he'll also be asa to have a noah from them. So according to the Ran and the Rashba, the Ran brings barichis, the reason why the neder takes effect in such a strong way that even if he replaces it with something else, and even if he plants it, that will be asr as well, is because he's talking about specific fruits that are right here. Peiris ha'elu, these fruits. When he says these fruits, so he means to make them completely asr, including anything that comes from them. Similar to the way it is with hektish. We had already before in the Gemara that every neder is similar to hektish. So much so the Gemara said that there's a concept of me'ilah that applies by a neder, and therefore when you make that neder on these specific fruits, so just like by a hektish, even the exchange of it and the gidulim of it will be asr, the same thing applies to this neder. That's the way that Ran explains this Mishnah here. But there are other Rishonim that say that it's lav dafke if he's saying these specific fruits, even if he says b'chlal kainim peiris, that peiris should be asa to me. Let's say he says grapes should be asa to me, figs should be asa to me, lav dafke these fruits. Also, it takes effect to this extent. But the Mishnah continues, what's if the lashon of his neder said, she'eni, the Bachir says, she'eni oichol v'she'eni tayim, that I will not eat, these peiris here I will not eat or I will not taste them. So he added the words eating or tasting. So then that means only eating and tasting these actual fruits. So then he'll be allowed to eat if there's an exchange or a replacement of these fruits, or if he planted them and other fruits grew, so then he's not tasting those actual fruits. So even though earlier in the Masechta we had that the lashon of eni eichel ve'eni tayim sometimes even adds more. Like for example, if you say you're not going to taste from it, that means not only the fruit itself, but even the juice of it as well. So usually it's more inclusive, this lashon of the neder. But nevertheless, regarding this inyan of chilufei and giduleyan, eichel and tayim does not apply to what you replace or what you plant, because you're not tasting from this or you're not eating from this itself. Okay, but now the Mishnah continues and says that all of this, what are we talking about here? B'dava shazare kola. When we're talking about planting and it grows, so we're talking about something that you plant seeds and the seeds rot in the ground and it grows from it. That's what we're talking about when it says over here that it would be mutter, the second case that I just said, that when you said she'eni eichel v'she'eni tayim, that it would be mutter to eat from the gidulim, that's because the seed rots in the ground and then it grows something new. But if you're planting something and it does not rot in the ground, for example, if you're planting garlic or onions, that's the example that the Mefarshim bring here, the Rishonim bring here, and those are things that it just adds to it. It doesn't completely rot. It's like when you plant these bulbs in the ground and it just adds more and more. So in such a case, afile gidule gidule nasurin. So not only beneged to the second case that we said here, that it will be asr as well, even though you said any echel any time, because the ikar of what you planted in the ground remains and it's just added to it. But even regarding the first case, what did it say? The gidulin are going to be asr. But the gidulim of the gidulim, which means if whatever grew, you went then again and planted that, and something grew from that, that would be mutter. But over here, if it's something that ein zare kala, when you plant it, the ikar that's there remains and it just gets added to it, so then it's all going to be asr. Now, the chiddush over here is that we're not going to say that it's batal b'roif, even though what's added, what grows more, the gidulim that grows, is more than the ikar that you planted. But nevertheless, we don't say that it's batal b'roif, because over here we do apply the rule that a dava sheyesh lo matirin, something that has a heter, is not batal b'roif. A neder is considered to be an object which has a heter to it. You can be mat to it, or go to a rav and be matir. So therefore, it's not going to be batal b'roif. Sagt the Mishnah, similar halacha to what we just learned, and it's applied just in a different case. A person says to his wife, "Kaine maisi yedaya chalai." I make a neder that your actions and what you do, what you prepare for me, should be asr to me. So let's say, for example, she's going to bake bread, or whatever she's going to make will be asr for me to have anah from it. Or kainim hein al pi, should be asr for my mouth. Kainim hein lipi, should be asr for my mouth. Asr, so then, like we said in the beginning, in the Reish of the Mishnah, he'll be asr bichilufeyan, even if he replaces this with something else, or bigiduleyan, or if it's planted and something grows. So let's say his wife baked bread, and then he takes that and he exchanges it, and he gets money for it. It's going to be asr. And giduleyan refers also if his wife worked, she worked in the field, and it grows, something grows in the field from what she worked. So then it'll be asr to have anah from what grows. But if he specifically says sha'ani oichol, sha'ani toyim, that I'm not going to have anah from what you make for me, if I'm not going to eat from it, or I'm not going to taste from it. So then, like we said before, this lashon does not include any replacement or anything that grows. Mutter b'chilufein and b'gidulei. Will be allowed to have anah from what is replaced and what grows from it. Again, the Mishnah clarifies b'davar shezarei kola. We're talking about something that when you plant it, it rots and it grows something new. Something that is not rotting in the ground, but it itself is added to it more and more. Then afile gidule gidule nasurin. So then in all cases here, not only is what grows asr, but even if you replant what grew and it grows again, will also be asr. Zok the Mishnah weiter, a person says to his wife, Sha'at oise, what you will make for me, whatever you do, Eini oichel, I will not eat, Ada Pesach. Until Pesach, I will not eat this. Sha'at oise, whatever you will prepare for me, Eini miskase Ada Pesach. I will not cover myself with this until Pesach. Okay, so pay attention to the lashon over here, very specifically what he said. So the Mishnah says, what does that mean? Asasa lifnei Pesach. So if she prepares for him food or she sews clothing for him until Pesach, so mutter lecha v'lehiskasais acha Pesach. He's not allowed to eat from it or dress himself with these things until Pesach. But after Pesach, he's allowed. Because again, the lashon of his neder was Eini oichel ad ha-Pesach, and then he said Sha'at oiseh. Eini miskasa ad ha-Pesach. So only until Pesach I will not use this, but after Pesach I will. So he will be allowed. But now, if his lashon of the neder was different, Sha'at oiseh ad ha-Pesach. Whatever you make until Pesach, Eini oichel, I will not eat. V'sha'at oiseh ad ha-Pesach. Whatever you make, clothing you make for me until Pesach, Eini miskasa, I will not wear, I will not cover myself with it. So over here, this lashon of the neder shows that he will not use this forever. Also, lifnei Pesach, if she makes these clothing or if she prepares these food until Pesach, aser lechol uleskases acha Pesach. He will not be allowed to eat or cover himself with it even after Pesach as well. Zok the Mishnah weiter, another halacha, if a person made a neder with his wife with the following condition. And we had this quoted earlier in the Masechta a long time ago. Sha'at nenesli ada Pesach. So let's say he's standing sometime between Sukkot and Pesach, and he says that I make a neder that you should not have hana from me until Pesach. Im hoyleches at lebeis avich ada Chag. If you're going to go to your father's house until Sukkot. So this is a neder which is dependent on a condition. And the condition is much later goes much later than the neder. If she doesn't go to her parents' house until Sukkot, then she could have anah from him. But if she goes to her parents until Sukkot, she can't have anah from him. So halcha lifnei Pesach, if she went to her parents before Pesach, so she already fulfilled that condition. She already went. So asura b'hanasai ada Pesach. She'll be asked to have anah from her husband until Pesach time. Okay, la'achar ha-Pesach. But that includes the entire time from when the neder was made until Sukkot, including until Pesach. That's that.
Wait a minute, this is already. This was what?
He was standing, let's say now, in Kislev time, and he makes a neder. Yeah. So. Okay, so then, yeah. Dr. Mishnah weiter, la'achar Pesach. What if she went to her parents' house after Pesach? So then, bival yachal. So she'll be over lemafreya. Retroactively, she's going to be over on this lav of bal yachal if she had anah from her husband before Pesach. And the condition was that she would not be allowed if she would go to her parents until Sukkot. So if after Pesach, before Sukkot. She went to her parents' house. So retroactively, whatever Anah she had from her husband before Pesach will be Aser. Okay, so now when you learn the simple pshat of the Mishnah, it seems like that she's allowed to have Anah from her husband until Pesach, as long as she makes sure not to go to her parents until Sukkot. Okay? But we had this in the Gemara before in Daf Tezvav, and there the Gemara, according to one opinion, said that because there's a condition that was made that she shouldn't go to her parents until Sukkot, so she's actually midrabanon, not allowed to have Anah from her husband even until Pesach, because we're afraid that after Pesach until Sukkot, she may go to her parents' house, and then the condition will be fulfilled, and then it'll come out that the neder will be aser. So therefore, midrabanon, she may not have Anah from her husband until Pesach. And when it says over here in the Mishnah that she's allowed, it's just minat Torah, but midrabanan there is an issue. That's according to one opinion. Sagt the Mishnah weiter, similar thing, and over here the case is just a little bit different at the neder. Let's see, Sha'at nenesli, he says to his wife that, again, he's, let's say, standing now in the time of Kislev, before Pesach, and he says that the neder is that you should not have Anah from me ad achag, from now all the way until the next Sukkot. If you go to your father's house until Pesach. So he's a little bit kinder. He's not stopping her from going to her parents and all the way until Sukkot, but just until Pesach. If she went to her parents' house before Pesach, so now that puts the neder into effect. She fulfilled that condition. Asura b'anah, she will not be allowed to have Anah from her husband all the way until the next Sukkot. Muteres, now the Mishnah adds another din here. Muteres leilech acha Pesach. After Pesach, she's allowed to go to her parents' house. And that means seemingly this is a very simple din. I mean, why should she not be allowed to go to her parents after Pesach? He said that she should not be allowed to go to her parents until Pesach. After Pesach, there's no issue of her going to her parents' house. So some Rishonim say that what it says here in the Mishnah is Pashit. But the Ran, earlier in the Masechta, said that the Mishnah here is saying that even though the neder took effect, that now she can't have Anah from her husband anymore because she went to her parents' house before Pesach, so there would have been a svara to say that since the neder is in effect, Chachamim would be geyser that she should not go to her parents' house, so not to confuse the neder with the condition, and she should think that there is no neder, so maybe we should ask her to go to her parents' house all the way until Sukkot. Therefore the Mishnah says, no, the neder took effect, and now she will not be able to have Anah from her husband all the way until Sukkot, but she's still allowed to go to her parents' house. We don't stop her. Okay, the Gemara here is going to focus on the first part of the Mishnah. The second part of the Mishnah that we just learned, like I said, this was explained before in Daf Tezvav. First part of the Mishnah, we spoke about a person that's planting the peiris that he made aser with the neder, and the Mishnah said that there's a difference if what he's planting is zarei kola, the seeds rot in the ground, or ein zarei kola, the seeds do not rot in the ground. Like when you plant onions or garlic, and it just adds to it, the gidulim that grows is adding to the ikr that you planted. So it said in the Mishnah, okay, so the Gemara is going to bring a question regarding the case of planting something where the seeds do not rot in the ground, it just gets added to it, and the way this applies to other halachas, not only by a neder, but it applies to many other halachas as well. Sagt the Gemara, Yishmael ish kfar yama. Yishmael, he was a man that came from a village near the water. V'amir la ish kfar dima. Or he was a man that came from a village called Dima. Hela biyadai, so he brought in his hands the following question. Batzel, a onion, sha'akre b'shviyes. He uprooted this onion in Shemitah time. So it's an onion of Shemitah, and anything that grows in Shemitah has very specific halachas of how you have to treat this, how it has to be eaten. There's the kedusha of Shemitah that applies to it. You can't just dispose of it. All different halachas. Now he took this onion, the notoi b'shminis, and he planted it in the next year, in the 8th year. And v'rabu gidulav al ikroi, and now it grew more than the ikr of this onion that you planted, even though it's something that's not zarei kola, it will never rot, but it just adds more and more bulbs, more onions that come out. So what's the halacha here? And what is his question? His question is as follows: Gidulav heter, the ikroi aser. Do I say that what grew is heter, and the ikr that you planted, that was the shmita onion, and that the ikr is aser? And therefore, kivin derabu gidulov me ikroi, since what added to this onion when you planted it in the 8th year, so it grew more than that ikr, than the original onion that you planted, or the bach here is goyres al ikroi, that it grew more than the ikr that you planted. So oison gidule heter mailin esa iser. So therefore, what grew and is much more than the ikr that you planted, so therefore it'll all be batal beroiv, and you'll be maila the heter as well, that it should all be mutter. Or what grew will not be matter the ikr that you planted, even though what grew from this onion in the 8th year is much more than the original onion of the shmita that was aser. That's the question over here. This is a shaila benegei to shmita, but it's related to our Mishnah, because our Mishnah spoke about this case of ein zare kala, and regarding the neder, the Mishnah said that it will not be batal beroiv. As I mentioned, that the pshat in the Mishnah is because it's a davar sheyesh le matirin. So the Gemara wants to know what's the halacha over here benegei to shmita. Now, what's the basis of the Gemara's shaila? So according to the Ran's pshat, the Gemara's shaila is really beikir benegei to the gidulim themselves. When you look in the words of the Gemara, it looks like the Gemara's shaila is whether the gidulin, which are mutter, are they going to be mevatel the ikr, which is shmita, which is aser. But the Ran says no, that really the shaila of the Gemara is benegei to the actual gidulin, because maybe you could say that the gidulin that's growing from what's aser is aser just like the iser itself. Because it's growing, it's just an outgrowth, and it's expanding from the ikr, which was never kala, which never rotted. So therefore, the gidulin themselves is just as much aser as the ikr itself. So there's no way the gidulin are going to be mevatel the ikr if the gidulin themselves are aser. Or maybe no. Maybe I say the iser of shmita is only in the actual onions that you planted, but what grows out of it, and it grew in the 8th year, is not shmita, and therefore that's mutter. And if it's mutter, it'll be mevatel the ikr. So even though the lashon of the Gemara seems like it's asking regarding whether the gidulin could be mevatel the ikr, the main point the Gemara is really trying to ask is benegei to the gidulin, whether the gidulin are going to be aser or mutter. If they're aser, they obviously are not going to be mevatel the ikr, and if they're mutter, they will be mevatel the ikr. That's the Ran's pshat in the Gemara. However, there are other Rishonim that learn the pshat in the Gemara, which is sort of more in the simple pshat of what the Gemara is saying, that the gidulin are for sure mutter. That's not the question. The gidulin, even though it's coming from the onions that never rotted, and it's sort of an outgrowth of the existing onion of shmita, but nevertheless, the gidulin that grow now in the 8th year, that's for sure aser. What's the question? Do they have the koyach to be mevatel the ikr that is from shmita? And the question is, maybe this ikr that's there in the ground is considered to be a davar chashuv that will never become batal. For whatever reason. It's something that you could never be mevatel. And even if the gidulin is more than the ikr, it will not be mevatel. It's similar to the svara that I said regarding the Mishnah, that something which is also because of a neder is a davar sheyesh le matirin, and it never becomes batal. Maybe benegei to shmita, I also say that these onions themselves is a davar chashuv and it never becomes batal. That's the shayla of the Gemara is take only benegei to the ikr, like it sounds like in the simple pshat of the words of the Gemara. So the Gemara says, asla kamei de Rabami. So Yishmael ish kfar yama. So he came to Rabami to ask him this question. Lo yava biyode. Rabami did not have an answer to this question. Asla kamei de Rabbi Yitzchak nafche. So he went to Rabbi Yitzchak nafche with this question. Pashat le minado de Omer Rab Chanina trisa Omer Rab Yanai. So he resolved this question from what Rab Chanina brought in the name of Rab Yanai. Similar shaila that he had regarding truma. Batzel shel truma. A person takes an onion of truma. Shenoto, he planted it, and now v'rabu gidulov al ikrai, and what grew is more than the ikr of this onion that was in the ground. So obviously something that's truma, only a kohen kirit, no zar, nobody besides a kohen kiritis. But now you have what grew more than what the ikr of the truma was, mutter. So what grew, it's going to be mutter. Or according to the pshat of the Rishonim, even the ikr is going to be mutter as well. That's the main thing that it's saying over here. Yeah, so it all will be mutter. So you see clearly over here that he was saying that once it grows and it's more than the ikr that was there, it's mevatalit. So he said it's regarding truma. So we could apply the same thing regarding shmita, that the onion that's there is mutter. So Rabbi Yirmiyah said to Rabbi Yitzchak nafche v'teimer Rab Zrika, or Rab Zrika said to him, why are you paskening this way? Shavik, you're paskening, you're bringing a raya from Rabbi Yanai. Shavik mar train, you left two other Amirayim that argue with Rabbi Yanai, v'avet kachad, and you're only paskening like one Amirah, like Rabbi Yanai. Ma ninhu train, who are other two Amirayim that said differently? So he quotes the Amar Rabbi Vo, Amar Rabbi Yechanan. So first of all, Rabbi Vo said in the name of Rabbi Yechanan regarding the halacha of Arla. Arla is the first 3 years. You may not have anah from the peitus of the tree. So Yalda, you have a young tree that's within 3 years, and you took a branch from that tree, shesivcha b'zekeino, and you grafted it into an older tree that's already not Arla. Uba peitus, and now peitus grow in this. Now afa pisha haisifa masayim, even if after you grafted it into this older tree, so it added to this branch 200 times as much as it was before. B'negei to Arla. If you want to be mevatel Arla, the number to be mevatel Arla has to be 200 of heter against what's there that's aser. So therefore he says, even if 200 times of heter were added to the iser, but still aser. Because when it grows, it's not mevatel it, and therefore it's still going to be aser. According to the Pshat of the Ran, again, the Ran says the idea of growing, something that grows, it's growing from the ikr. The ikr was never batel. Because what's growing is coming from the ikr itself, it can never be batel. Bittul is only if you have something else, which is going to be mevatel, this that's aser. But if it's growing out of the isser itself in a way that the isser itself was never kala, it's still going to be aser. So we see clearly Rabbi Yechanan said, not like Rabbi Yanai, that by Arla it will be aser. That's one. Now another Amayra that said, V'amr Rav Shmuel bar Rabbi Nachmeni Amr Rabbi Yenesin, Batzel Shanotoi Bekerem. You took an onion and you planted it in a vineyard. Now this is kalayim, right? You're planting a vineyard together with a vegetable or an onion, so it becomes kalayim. But then what happened is, V'nekara Kerem, the vineyard was uprooted from this area. And according to some, Yemosef over here in the Gears of the Gemara in Menachos that brings this, says this, Afila Haisif Masayim. And then you left that onion there. So originally the onion grew together with the vineyard, but now it grew another 200 times as much from what it was before. So again, just like by Arla, when you add another 200 times, it's mevatel. So too by Kilayim, another 200 times, it should be mevatel it. But nevertheless, it's still going to be aser, because it's all an outgrowth from what was there before. So he also said it's aser. Okay, so this was the question that was asked in Rabbi Yitzchak Nafche. So Yishmael ish Kfar Yama. He came back to Rabami a second time. First, when he came to him, he didn't have an answer. Now he came back to him a second time. And now Poshetle Minada, and he now answered him from the following statement that Rabbi Yechanan, that's brought in the name of Rabbi Yechanan. Amar Rabbi Yitzchak, Amar Rabbi Yechanan. Rabbi Yitzchak said in the name of Rabbi Yechanan. Different than what was quoted before, Rabbi Vo before, quoted in the name of Rabbi Yechanan. Here Rabbi Yitzchak says in the name of Rabbi Yechanan, litra betzalim, if you have a litra, a certain amount of onions, shetikna, that you were mesaken this, you fixed this, meaning that you took off all trumas and maisris, and vizara, and then he went and he planted it, mis aseres lafikula. So now, after you planted it and it grew more from it, you have to give maisris not only on what's new that grew from it, but you have to give maisris from the whole entire thing. So what do you see from this? Alme, what I see is Oisan Gidulin Mevatlin Iker. That the Gidulin, the additional that grew here, which you did not give meiser from it. Again, you did not yet give meiser from it, and therefore now you have to give meisers from the new that grew. So therefore you have to give meisers from the whole thing. Also from what you originally gave meiser from it. So you see that the Gidulin is Mevatlin Iker. It's Mevatl the Iker, and we should apply the same thing regarding Shemitah. That if you took from what was Shemitah and you planted it, and then the whole thing should become bottle and it should be mutter. And what grew in the 8th year should be mevatel what was there from Shemitah, and the whole thing should become mutter. Just like we're saying over here regarding the maisres, that even though you already gave maisres from the ikir, but what grew now you did not give maisres from, it's mevatel the ikir, and you have to not give maisres of the whole thing. So I should also say lekula regarding Shemitah, that what grew in the 8th year should be mevatel the onion of the 7th year, and the whole thing should be aser. So the Gemara says, the Gemara does not accept this raya, because dilme lechumre shani. Maybe over here we're using this svara to say astringency. Over here we're coming to say that even though you already gave the maisres from the ikir, but what added, what grew out, you did not give maisres from, so what grew is mevatel the ikir to be machmer, that you have to give maisres from the whole thing. But you can't apply that back to the original question, benegei to Shemitah, to say lekula, that what grew in the 8th year is going to be mevatel from what was there from the 7th year, that it should all be mutter. So therefore the Gemara says this is not a raya. Okay, we'll stop over here, but just to point out, the Ran says that here Rabbi Yitzchak is quoting the name of Rabbi Yechanan, the opposite of what's quoted before in the name of Rabbi Yechanan and Rabbi Vo. So at this point in the Gemara at least, there's two opinions what Rabbi Yechanan held.
You also said that